You ever had a moment where you felt like you were doing everything right and yet nothing was working? You prayed, you showed up, you put in the effort, but instead of doors flying open, you hit walls. That moment, the one filled with frustration, doubt, and maybe even a little bit of anger, is the moment faith is tested the most. And it's in that moment we have three choices. We can panic, we can force things to happen, or we can pray, trust, and watch God work. We've been taught in one way or another that strength means having it all together, that being strong means pushing through, never letting them see you sweat, never showing weakness. We've been conditioned to believe that if we keep our guard up, if we stay in control, if we never let people see the cracks, we'll be safe, we'll be respected, we'll be untouchable. But what if the exact thing we've been running from, vulnerability, is actually the thing that makes us the strongest? Vulnerability is terrifying. It's that feeling in your gut when you step into something uncertain, something that could hurt, something that has no guarantees. It's showing up fully when you have no clue how things will turn out. It's loving with your whole heart when you know there's a chance of heartbreak. It's believing in something bigger than yourself when logic tells you to be realistic. Vulnerability is strength because it demands courage, real, raw, gut-wrenching courage. It's easy to build walls. It's easy to hide behind perfectionism, behind excuses, behind the image we've created to protect ourselves. But real strength is stepping out from behind those walls and saying, here I am, this is me. Unfiltered, unedited, unafraid. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive. I guarantee they weren't the moments when you were playing it safe. They were the moments when you took a risk, when you let yourself be seen, when you showed up despite fear whispering in your ear. Vulnerability is what gives life meaning because it's the birthplace of love, connection, and faith. When it comes to faith, vulnerability is everything. To truly trust God means to release control, to admit that you don't have all the answers, to surrender the need to predict every outcome. And that's hard because surrender feels a lot like falling, like free falling into the unknown with no safety net, no guarantees. But here's the truth, faith is the net. Vulnerability and faith go hand in hand because both require you to step forward without knowing exactly how things will work out. And yet we resist. We resist vulnerability because we've been hurt before, because we've been judged, because the world can be harsh and people can be cruel. So we armor up. We convince ourselves that if we just stay strong enough, detached enough, independent enough, we won't get hurt again. But in doing so, we don't just protect ourselves from pain, we also block ourselves from love, from joy, from deep connection. The strongest people I know aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who fall and get back up. They're the ones who open their hearts again, even after being broken. They're the ones who pray even when they're drowning in doubt. They're the ones who show up fully, even when there's a chance of failure. Vulnerability is strength because it's real. It's honest. It takes courage to admit when you're struggling, to ask for help, to say, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm going to show up anyway. It takes strength to stand in the tension of uncertainty, to keep believing, to keep hoping, to keep trusting. We weren't meant to walk through life hardened, guarded, afraid of being seen. We were meant to show up fully, exactly as we are. Because strength isn't about never falling. Strength is about rising every single time we do. For many of us, prayer starts as a transaction, a request, a plea, a list of things we need, things we want, things we hope will change. And there's nothing wrong with asking God for help. We're supposed to. But if prayer is only a request line, then we're missing the very heart of it. Because prayer is not just about getting answers. It's about connection. Think about the relationships that matter most in your life. The people you turn to when you're struggling. The ones who celebrate your victories. The ones who sit with you in the silence of your hardest days. Those relationships thrive, not because you only reach out when you need something, because of the time, the conversations, the presence you share. Prayer is the same. What if we stopped treating prayer as a moment of desperate asking and started seeing it as an ongoing conversation? What if prayer wasn't just about speaking, but also about listening? What if it wasn't about saying the right words, but about simply being in God's presence? Too often we approach prayer with an agenda. God, please fix this. God, I need an answer now. God, make this happen. And while there's nothing wrong with being honest about our needs, what happens when the answer doesn't come right away? What happens when the situation doesn't change? If prayer is only about results, then we start believing that unanswered prayers mean God isn't listening. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Because the purpose of prayer isn't just to change things around us, it's to change us. Prayer at its core is intimacy with God. It's stepping into a sacred space where we don't have to perform, where we don't have to have all the answers, where we don't have to pretend. It's a space where we can be raw, honest, unfiltered, where we can bring our deepest fears, our biggest dreams, our doubts, our anger, our joy, all of it, and know that we are fully seen and fully loved. And here's the beautiful thing, God already knows what we need. Before we even speak a word, he knows. Prayer isn't about informing God of what's going on in our lives, it's about inviting him into it. It's about leaning in when we don't understand. It's about sitting in stillness when everything in us wants to run. It's about surrendering, not because we've given up, but because we trust that even in the silence, even in the waiting, God is near. And that kind of connection doesn't always come through words. Sometimes the most powerful prayers aren't spoken at all. They're the deep sighs when you don't know what to say, the tears that fall when the weight is too much, the moments when you simply sit in his presence, no agenda, no demands, just a quiet understanding that you are not alone. Prayer is an invitation to let go of the need to control, the need to figure everything out, the need to have all the answers. An invitation to be still, to be present, to be held. And when we begin to see prayer this way, everything shifts. It's no longer a task on a checklist, no longer a ritual we perform out of obligation. It becomes the heartbeat of our relationship with God. It becomes a constant, steady rhythm in our lives, one that carries us through the highs and lows, the moments of certainty and the moments of doubt. Because prayer was never meant to be a formula. It was always meant to be a relationship. Trusting is easy when life is predictable, when things make sense, when the road ahead is clear and everything is unfolding the way we hoped it would. It's easy to trust when the prayers are answered, when the opportunities show up, when the doors open. But what about when they don't? What about when the healing doesn't come? When the job falls through? When the relationship ends? When the prayers feel like they're met with silence? That's where real trust begins. Because real trust isn't about believing when things are going our way. It's about believing even when they aren't. It's about surrendering even when the outcome looks different than what we prayed for. It's about saying, I don't understand, but I still believe. And that's hard. Everything in us wants certainty. We want to know how it's going to work out. We want reassurance that if we step forward in faith, the path will be smooth. That if we pray hard enough, if we do the right things, if we check all the right boxes, everything will fall into place. But trust doesn't work that way. Trust asks us to release control. It asks us to let go of the idea that our faith is a formula, that if we just say the right prayers, if we just have enough faith, we'll get the outcome we're hoping for. Trusting beyond the outcome means believing that God is still good, even when life isn't. It means holding on to faith, even when the story isn't unfolding the way we expected. It means understanding that God's perspective is bigger than ours, that he sees what we can't see, that his plan is woven with wisdom we may not fully understand in the moment. And that requires surrender. Surrender isn't passive. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's not giving up or resigning ourselves to whatever happens. Surrender is active trust. It's choosing daily to release our grip on the outcome and lean into faith. It's saying, even if I don't get the answer I want, I still choose to trust. Think about the moments in your life when things didn't go as planned. Maybe at the time it felt like everything was falling apart. Maybe you wrestled with disappointment, with doubt, with frustration. But looking back, maybe you can also see that something was being shaped in you. That even in the waiting, even in the struggle, something deeper was happening. Growth was happening. Strength was being built. Faith was being refined. Because trusting beyond the outcome isn't just about waiting for things to change, it's about being changed in the waiting. It's about learning to rely on something bigger than ourselves. It's about discovering a faith that isn't dependent on circumstances, but rooted in something unshakable. It's about stepping into the unknown, not because we have all the answers, but because we know who is leading us. And sometimes the greatest miracles aren't the ones that happen around us. They're the ones that happen within us. When we learn to trust beyond the outcome, we step into a deeper kind of faith. A faith that isn't built on guarantees, but on relationship. A faith that isn't based on what we receive, but on who we are becoming. A faith that isn't shaken by uncertainty, but strengthened by it. Trusting beyond the outcome doesn't mean we won't feel fear. It doesn't mean we won't wrestle with doubt. It doesn't mean we won't struggle with the waiting. But it does mean that even in the uncertainty, we can stand firm. Even in the unknown, we can move forward. Even when we don't understand, we can still choose to believe. Shame and fear have a way of keeping us stuck. They whisper lies that tell us we're not enough, that we'll never be enough. They convince us that if people really knew us, if they knew our past, our mistakes, our struggles, we'd be unworthy of love, unworthy of belonging. Shame tells us to hide. Fear tells us not to try. And together they build walls that keep us from living fully, from believing we're worthy just as we are. Shame is heavy. It weighs on the soul in ways that nothing else does is different from guilt. Guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a mistake. Guilt is about what we've done. Shame is about who we believe we are. And when shame takes hold, it doesn't just affect how we see ourselves, it affects how we see God. Because when we're wrapped in shame, we start believing we have to earn love, that we have to perform for acceptance, that we have to prove our worthiness. We start thinking that if we do more, if we're better, if we work harder, then maybe, just maybe, we'll be enough. But shame is a trap. And no matter how much we do, it never feels like enough. And then there's fear. Fear that we'll fail. Fear that we'll be rejected. Fear that we'll be seen for who we really are, and that who we are won't be good enough. Fear convinces us to play small, to stay quiet, to avoid risks. It tells us that if we stay in our comfort zones, we'll be safe. But safety is not the same as freedom. Staying small might protect us from rejection, but it also keeps us from fully living. Fear thrives in the unknown. It feeds on uncertainty. It keeps us questioning, what if I try and fail? What if I put myself out there and get hurt? What if I step into something new and it all falls apart? But what if the bigger risk isn't failure? What if the bigger risk is never stepping out at all? What if the real loss isn't rejection, but a life half lived because fear convinced us not to show up? Shame and fear were never meant to be the things that define us. They were never meant to be the voices we listen to. But letting go of them isn't about pretending they don't exist. It's about facing them. It's about recognizing when they show up and choosing to live anyway. It's about acknowledging the fear, the insecurity, the doubt, and saying, you don't get to make my decisions for me. Letting go of shame means understanding that our worth isn't based on what we've done or haven't done. It's not based on how perfect we are or how well we perform. Worth is something we already have. It's not something we earn, it's something we accept. It's choosing to believe that we are already loved, already enough, already worthy, simply because we are here. Letting go of fear means stepping into the unknown, not because we have all the answers, but because we refuse to let fear make our choices. It means trusting that even if things don't go as planned, even if we stumble, even if we fail, we will be okay. Because failure is not the end. Mistakes are not our identity. Struggles do not define us. And when we let go of shame and fear, something shifts. We start living with open hands instead of clenched fists. We stop trying to control everything and start trusting. We stop striving for perfection and start embracing grace. We stop hiding and start showing up fully, wholly, unashamedly ourselves. Waiting is hard. It stretches us, tests us, forces us to sit in the uncomfortable space between where we are and where we want to be. It can feel like nothing is happening, like prayers are going unanswered, like time is slipping through our fingers while we're standing still. Waiting can be frustrating, lonely, even exhausting. But what if waiting wasn't just about holding on until something changes? What if waiting was an opportunity, not just an obstacle? What if gratitude had the power to shift how we experience the in-between? Gratitude is easy when life is moving forward, when things are falling into place, when we can see progress. But gratitude and waiting, that's different. That requires a deeper kind of faith. It means choosing to find joy even when circumstances don't look the way we want them to. It means noticing the good that exists right now instead of only focusing on what's missing. Waiting often brings frustration because it makes us feel out of control. We don't know when the answer will come, when the opportunity will show up, when the situation will shift. But gratitude reminds us that while we may not control the timing, we do control our perspective. We can spend our waiting season consumed by what isn't happening, or we can open our eyes to what is happening, the small blessings, the unexpected moments of grace, the growth taking place even when we don't see it. Gratitude shifts our focus. Instead of fixating on what we lack, we start seeing what we have. Instead of living in frustration, we step into contentment. This doesn't mean we stop hoping, stop praying, or stop believing for more. It simply means we learn to hold both the longing and the gratitude, the waiting and the joy. There is something powerful about being grateful before the breakthrough, about praising before the promise is fulfilled. It's easy to say thank you when the answer comes, when the door opens, when the waiting is over. But true gratitude is found in the moments when nothing has changed yet, when we're still in the in-between, when we're still trusting. It's in those moments that gratitude becomes an anchor, keeping us steady when impatience tries to pull us under. Waiting is never wasted. There is something happening in the stillness, something being shaped in us, something being prepared that we may not see yet. Gratitude helps us lean into that truth. It reminds us that even in the waiting, there is beauty. Even in the uncertainty, there is goodness. Even when we don't have all the answers, there is something worth celebrating. Gratitude in waiting is not about denying the frustration, the struggle, or the longing. It's about choosing to see beyond it. It's about recognizing that while we may be waiting for something big, there are small moments of grace happening right now. It's about understanding that just because we don't see movement doesn't mean nothing is shifting. Sometimes the most profound growth happens in the seasons where nothing seems to be changing. The waiting won't last forever. The answers will come. The doors will open. The timing will unfold exactly as it's meant to. But the way we wait matters. The perspective we carry in the waiting shapes who we become. Gratitude has the power to turn waiting from a burden into a season of growth, from frustration into faith, from longing into deeper trust. And when we embrace gratitude in the waiting, we don't just endure it, we are transformed by it. Resilience isn't just about pushing through. It's not about pretending things don't hurt, putting on a brave face, or ignoring the weight of what you're carrying. Resilience is about getting back up with the weight, learning to stand even when life has knocked you down, and finding the strength to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. But real resilience, the kind that doesn't just help you survive, but actually transforms you, comes through faith. Faith gives resilience a foundation. Without it, resilience can feel like just another battle to fight, another challenge to overcome on our own strength. But faith shifts the perspective. Faith reminds us that we are not alone in the struggle, that we don't have to be strong enough because God's strength is already enough, that we don't have to have all the answers because we serve a God who sees what we cannot. Faith doesn't eliminate pain, but it reframes it. It teaches us that struggle is not the end of the story, that setbacks are not final, that even when everything feels like it's falling apart, there is still something being built within us. When we have faith, resilience is no longer just about enduring, it's about growing. It's about seeing hardships not as punishments, but as places where strength is forged. It's about recognizing that pain has a purpose, not because suffering is good, but because God can bring good out of anything. Resilience through faith means trusting that even in the moments of deep uncertainty, something is being shaped within us. It's about believing that even when we can't see a way forward, there is one. It's about holding on to the truth that our circumstances do not define us, our faith does. There will be moments where resilience feels impossible, where the weight is too heavy, the waiting is too long, the uncertainty is too overwhelming, where doubt creeps in and whispers that maybe this time you won't make it through. But this is where faith becomes the foundation that resilience stands on. Because faith says, even now, even here I will trust. Resilience through faith isn't about avoiding pain. It's about standing in the middle of it and choosing to believe that it won't break you. It's about getting up, even when you don't feel strong enough, because you know you're not standing alone. It's about surrendering control, not in defeat, but in trust, knowing that you don't have to have everything figured out, because God already does. And that kind of resilience changes everything. It allows you to face uncertainty with courage. It teaches you to see struggle as part of the process, not as a sign that you've been forgotten. It turns obstacles into opportunities for deeper faith, deeper trust, deeper transformation. Because resilience through faith isn't just about enduring life's storms, it's about learning how to walk through them with confidence, knowing that no matter how strong the winds blow, your foundation is unshakable. We tend to look for miracles in the big moments, the breakthrough that changes everything, the answered prayer that arrives just in time, the impossible situation that turns around in an instant. We wait for something grand, something undeniable, something that leaves no room for doubt. And while those miracles do happen, they are not the only ones. Most miracles don't come as lightning bolts. They come quietly, softly, in the spaces we often overlook. They come in the form of a sunrise that reminds us that darkness never lasts forever, in the way a stranger's kindness reaches us at just the right moment, in the unexpected phone call that brings comfort, in the laughter shared after a hard day, in the small provisions that arrive when we need them most. The problem isn't that miracles are rare, it's that we often fail to recognize them. We get so caught up in the waiting, in the longing for something bigger, that we miss what's right in front of us. We convince ourselves that if life isn't changing dramatically, then nothing is happening. But God moves in the details, in the ordinary, in the things we sometimes dismiss as coincidence. Miracles aren't just about the extraordinary, they are about presence, about noticing, about shifting our perspective so that we begin to see the hand of God in places we once ignored. There are moments every day that remind us we are cared for, moments that whisper, "You are not alone." The problem is we are often too distracted to hear them. We are too busy searching for the big answers, the big blessings, that we overlook the quiet ones, the steady ones, the ones that sustain us without us even realizing it. Recognizing the small miracles requires us to slow down, to pay attention, to look at our lives, not just through the lens of what we lack, but through the lens of what we have. Gratitude opens our eyes to what has been there all along. The things we once took for granted suddenly become evidence of grace. Miracles are not just about what God does, they are also about who He is. A miracle is not just the moment when everything changes, it's also the way He sustains us while we wait. It's the peace that shows up in the middle of uncertainty. The strength to take another step even when we don't know where the road leads. The reminder that we are seen, held, and known even in the most ordinary moments of our lives. And sometimes what we see as small is not small at all. The breath in our lungs, the love we give and receive, the resilience that keeps us moving forward, these are miracles in themselves. The fact that we have made it through days we thought would break us, the way hope keeps rising even after disappointment, the way light still finds its way into the darkest places. The more we recognize the small miracles, the more we start to see how deeply God is woven into our everyday lives. The more we notice, the more we realize that we have never been without them. The extraordinary isn't just found in the rare, massive moments of divine intervention, it's found in the everyday ways we are loved, guided, and sustained. Trusting doesn't mean standing still. It doesn't mean waiting passively, hoping that everything will magically fall into place. Trust is active. It's stepping forward even when the path isn't clear. It's doing what you can while believing that God is working in ways you cannot see. It's a partnership, faith and action moving together. There's a tension between trust and action that can feel confusing. On one hand, we're told to surrender, to be still, to wait on God. On the other hand, we know we're called to move, to step out in faith, to do the work that is in front of us. The key isn't choosing between the two, it's learning how to do both at the same time. Trust is not passivity. Trust is not folding your hands and hoping something happens. Trust is stepping forward, even when you're unsure. It's taking risks, even when you don't have all the answers. It's showing up, even when you feel unqualified. Trust is saying, I don't know how this will work out, but I'm moving forward anyway. Faith without action is incomplete. It's easy to say we trust God, but real trust shows up in what we do. If we believe that God is leading us somewhere, we take the next step. If we believe He has placed something on our hearts, we pursue it. If we believe He is in control, we stop letting fear keep us frozen in place. Taking action while trusting means doing what we can with what we have. It means making the call, having the conversation, applying for the job, taking the opportunity, writing the first page, showing up even when it's uncomfortable. It means being faithful with the small things, even when the big picture isn't clear yet. Sometimes fear disguises itself as waiting. We tell ourselves we're waiting on God when deep down we're just afraid to move. We're afraid of failure, afraid of rejection, afraid of making the wrong decision. But trust is not about having all the answers. It's about believing that even if we stumble, we are still held. Even if things don't go as planned, we are still being guided. There's a story in the Bible about the Israelites crossing the Jordan River. The waters didn't part first. The priests had to step into the river before anything happened. It was only when their feet touched the water that God made a way. That's what trust looks like, stepping into the unknown before we see the outcome. Trusting while taking action means being willing to move even when we feel unprepared. It means walking in faith even when we're uncertain. It means showing up even when we don't see immediate results. Trust is not just believing that God can do something, it's believing that He is doing something even when we don't see it yet. It's easy to wait until we feel ready, to wait until the fear is gone, until the timing feels perfect, until we have every piece of the puzzle. But faith doesn't work that way. Sometimes we have to take the first step before we know where the second one leads. Sometimes we have to move forward while still wrestling with doubt. Sometimes we have to act before we have full clarity. Trusting while taking action means surrendering the results. It means understanding that our job is obedience, God's job is the outcome. We are responsible for showing up, for doing what we can, for taking the next step. But we are not responsible for how everything unfolds. That part belongs to Him. It's about balance. Trusting doesn't mean forcing things to happen in our own strength. But it also doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means walking forward with faith, believing that as we move, God moves. That as we take steps, doors will open. That as we trust, provision will come. When we combine trust with action, we step into the life we are called to live. We stop waiting for perfect conditions and start moving in faith. We stop letting fear dictate our choices and start leaning into courage. We stop hesitating and start stepping forward, knowing that God is already ahead of us, making a way where we cannot yet see.